we're 249 years old this year. We have the semi-sesquicentennial 250 next July 4th, 2026. For 249 years, Michael, this experiment has worked. No president has ever done, and I want to say ever. Lincoln's an exception because you have a civil war and you suspend habeas corpus. I don't want to be too much of a lawyer here. And you posse comitatus, you can't send the troops. Lincoln was able to do those things during the Civil War, okay? But come back to now. First of all, people need to understand that Governor Pritzker is the chief law enforcement officer, if you will. He is the commander-in-chief of Illinois. The president of the United States does not have the constitutional or legal authority to just send troops to Chicago. It is illegal. It is unconstitutional because the governor has to activate the National Guard. D.C. is very different because that is under federal control. I need y'all to hear me on this. He does not have the legal authority to do what he did in California and L.A. That was an illegal order. There were no violent protests such that the president of the United States got a call from the governor. Think Lyndon Johnson, think John Kennedy, think Eisenhower, think the civil rights protests where the Guard had to be activated because people were being murdered and killed and beat unconscionably, right? So I need everybody, whether you're a Republican, a Democrat, or an independent, to understand we are in a very critical moment here, Michael. Authoritarianism is here. It's not coming. It is here. He is violating the Constitution day in and day out. And we need to put a stop to it. These governors need to assert their 10th Amendment rights, that they are the commander-in-chiefs of their states. Gavin Newsom has got this thing right. He's doing it right.
Well, Maria, what's your take on this? Because I agree with Sophia here that the governors, that there's an argument to be made. You know, Michael is the actual lawyer, co-host on this show, and I was asking him earlier, y'all. I was like, can't they just sue? Why are they waiting? They need to sue him now. And he's like, you can't preemptively sue. And I said, well, what can they do? They got to do something. You cannot just have the president deploying the United States military all over the United States of America. I mean, does anybody care? What about we talked about the 10th Amendment. What about the third? The founders debated this.
Yeah, it's going to be ugly, which, again, this is what he's trying to do. But the majority of the American people are not buying this, okay? He's going to tell everybody that they do, that they want a dictator, that they are buying it. The majority of the American people are not buying this. You know, I've interviewed throughout my career so many members of the military fighting wars like in Iraq or Afghanistan. The men and women of the military are trained to kill. That is their principal job. And while you have many in the military, or some, we don't know, right, who may believe in what Donald Trump is putting down, you also have many, many, many others who do not, and do not believe that this is what they signed up for. At what point, everything is evolving, right? So there's a possibility of a violent confrontation with a soldier with a gun because they're 18 years old, okay? But on the other hand, what you have is the potential for members of the military to now stand down and say, we are not going to do this. We did not sign up for this. And I think that that is inevitable. I reported on soldiers who were going AWOL, moving to Canada because they didn't want to serve after coming back from Iraq or Afghanistan. You have a long tradition of soldiers resisting against imposed war or military service. So again, it's a very fluid situation. The question for the protesters, right? Because there will be protests, and that is an essential part of American democracy, right? It's for them not to be baited. So the whole conversation about nonviolent resistance, laying down your bodies, as it were. But again, it is not going to end well. But this is exactly the struggle that we have to be in. So I, for one, I'm very happy to see that people are taking to the streets because that is an essential part of our democratic experiment.
Sophia, you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I want to bring it back to the center, though. The guardrails are now off, and he doesn't have the power to do what he's doing. We know Congress has decided they're out of this. It is what it is. So the courts, I think, have been doing their best to bounce it. I think this issue of California is going to go to the Supreme Court, right? Because it's going to be whether Newsom had the power or Trump did, and Newsom has the power, not Trump, as does Pritzker and not Trump. And so I want us to keep our eye on the ball as we go towards that semi-sesquicentennial next year, who are we going to be? Are we going to stay this great country we've been for 249 years with challenges? Yes, but whether it's Republican or Democrats, we've never seen a president do this before. He is breaking all the rules, and he's going against the guardrails, and that is authoritarianism.
Yeah, but I'm sorry. Ever since after the first 3 months of his presidency, we haven't been the shining beacon on top of the hill
don't disagree.
for the rest of the world.
Right.
We just haven't. And Maria does bring up an interesting example. So are the military leaders going to stand up and start the leaders or the rank and file? But I do think some leaders need to stand up. We do need to hear from General Mattis again. We need to hear from Mark Milley. They've done their service, but now is the time to hear from them. But if they do that, we're forgetting about ICE. They just got billions of dollars to be the largest police force in America. And if the military decides we're not going to carry out his bidding, well, ICE is over here under the direction of Tom Homan and the figurehead that is Kristi Noem with these little HSI vests on, canvassing our communities, snatching up our neighbors and calling them off to places that we know nothing about.
Right.
This is where we are.
Again, Simone, making all of the connections, and it's important that we use the right terms. Authoritarianism is what we are living through. It is not it might happen. It is actually, we are living through it right now. So at this point, you have to call this what it is. As you say, they are taking people from the streets and they are putting them into concentration camps. There is terms that we do not like to use: ethnic cleansing, concentration camps, people who are being trafficked, people who are being removed without judicial, any kind of due process. That is called trafficking. I was just in the airport last week after a long time of not being in one. It was great. And then you see the signs, like if you see something, say something, people being trafficked, it's like they are being trafficked. They are being trafficked and supported by this government, and it's all around us. Also, remember one quick thing: the connection to the protests against mass incarceration, the murder of George Floyd, that has everything to do with the intersection that is happening right now. Because a reduction of mass incarceration, where are the private prisons going to make their money? Exactly by going after undocumented immigrants, or immigrants with green cards, or frankly, anyone at this point, and to keep those detentions full. That is how they are making their money. And that's where now it's beyond the questions of legality. It has now become a business imperative to keep the billions going.